Last time on a Tekken Retrospective, Heihachi came back and committed domestic abuse yet again, this time going a little too far by throwing Kazuya into a volcano and killing him. But unbeknownst to him or us, Kazuya and Jun Kazama had f***ed right before he died. Yeah, Jun for some reason saw that, and she was like, let me get a piece of that. And after some time had passed, when Jun revealed she was pregnant, Kazuya would effectively dodge paying his child support by going back to his father to fight him. And of course, f***ing dying in the process. Tekken 3 is probably bar none the biggest fighting game of the 90s, and one of the most, arguably the most influential fighting games of all time. It absolutely shattered records and set trends, but why is that? Why is it still so beloved and cherished among both fighting game enjoyers and random millennials who grew up with it on the PlayStation? That is the very question that we hope to answer on this episode today. So, without further delay, let's get into Tekken 3. Tekken 3 was the first game in the series where our legendary hero Katsuhira Harada became the director.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up and sit the head down! And don't ask me for shit, okay?
His prior roles in Tekken 1 and 2 were simply voicing the in-game grunts of martial law and Yoshimitsu.
Hey, yo!
But when it came to Tekken 3, he took control of the helm, and spoiler alert, he may or may not have done a fantastic job. Tekken 3 was also created on the then brand new Namco System 12 hardware. Whilst the first two games were made on the System 11, both the graphical and technical upgrade as well as the new, less traditional and more 90s punky new generation aesthetic almost made Tekken 3 look like it was its own new game, not a sequel to Tekken 1 and 2. With sound effects that feel so much more arcadey and futuristic, stages that all look more urban with graffiti-painted streets, Chinatown neighborhoods, and wrestling rings, the characters all look and feel much more young, and of course the music is much more high energy and new wave, with the blaring rock guitars blasting everywhere and shining throughout almost all the game's soundtracks. The game started development shortly after the release of Tekken 2, and was worked on all the way through 1996 and early 1997. While it did have a limited release in Japanese arcades on the 28th of November 1996, it wouldn't be until almost 4 months later, on March 18th of 1997, when the game would get a proper release both in Japanese and North American arcades. And of course, right after, work started on the PlayStation 1 port. This was the version of the game that we all knew and loved to death. This was the iconic release of the game that hooked many a young man back in the late 90s and made them Tekken fans. You want classic Tekken? The angry old man is back and still old. We gotcha. You want new wave Tekken with high energy guitars? We gotcha. You want Gon, a dinosaur character created by the manga artist Masashi Tanaka in 1994? We gotcha. You want to play a Russian lab scientist on crack? We gotcha. You want balls? We f***ing gotcha. The PlayStation version of Tekken 3 is still beloved by fans of the series and nostalgia havers alike. For many, especially in America, this was what got them into Tekken and/or into fighting games in general. Development for the console port continued on as the conversion to PlayStation took around 8 months, which is significantly longer than that of Tekken 1 and 2. Did the fans waiting pay off on Namco's part? Of course, the conversion took a bit of time as the PlayStation's hardware wasn't strong enough to handle some things, hence the small downgrade in graphical fidelity and character models, as well as the backgrounds being made into 2D panoramic images once more. By April 1997, the arcade release of Tekken 3 was going huge. While the team was facing some difficulties, it was confirmed that a conversion to the PlayStation was entirely possible and was in the works. But you know what's funny? It was merely a controversial consideration on the Nintendo 64. The conversion to PlayStation was successful, although at first Namco representatives had in fact originally stated that they did not think it was possible to convert Tekken 3 to the PlayStation. And you were considering porting it to this f***ing thing? Finally, the conversion wrapped up smoothly, and the legendary generation-defining PlayStation port of Tekken 3 was released on the 26th of March 1998 in Japan, the 1st of May in North America, and the 12th of September in Europe and PAL regions. Right off the bat, there were tons of changes in both the mechanics and the entire way the game goes about itself. Heavily buffed movement, far smoother and better controlling strings and combos, tech rolling, and so many mechanics that have made it into modern Tekken nowadays. Obviously, the biggest and most obvious change is the addition of sidesteps to every character. There was no sidewalking just yet, but the sidesteps themselves covered like half the screen, so you'd be just fine. In addition to this also was the tech roll, a wake-up option which allowed you to roll to the side while getting up to avoid low attacks while on the ground. Wake-up times in general were better, and you couldn't go and cook dinner, eat it, take a shit, and write an entire email by the time the game allowed you to get the hell back up. Jumps didn't allow you to fly to the damn moon anymore, just so many changes that made the game much smoother to play. A good number of the characters from Tekken 1 and 2 do make a return to Tekken 3. These characters include an older, now grey-haired Heihachi Mishima, as the game takes place 20 years after Tekken 2. He is now the CEO of the Mishima Zaibatsu and has been since he took it back with Force from his son Kazuya years ago. Maybe with a little too much force. We also have the feuding sisters Nina and Anna Williams having just awoken from their cold sleep experiments and now free. Nina has just about lost all her memories, much to the surprise and heartbreak of her sister Anna, who remembers everything just as it was. The rough and wild American rival of the late Kazuya Mishima, Paul Phoenix, is also back. Though a bit older, he's retained all of his wild attributes, which is something I love that they did, as even though he's now middle-aged, he's still vigorous, brash, and charismatic. We do have some newer versions of older characters which are technically new but still could be considered returning characters, such as the likes of King II, Kuma II, and Gunjack, the newest iteration of Jack, Julia Chang, the adoptive daughter of Michelle from the first two games, and instead of martial law, we now have Forest Law, both of whom play exactly like their parents. Other than them, every single other character in the roster is basically brand new. From the new protagonist Jin Kazama, the son of Jun and Kazuya, who is a mix of his parents and fighting style, using the Mishima Ryu karate as well as the Kazama style, he retains most of the iconic Mishima attacks such as the 1-1-2 flash combo, the electric wind god fist, the roundhouse to triple spin kicks, and so much more, but also retains moves from his mother such as the lizard combo or the forward 2 demon slayer. We also have Hwarang, a taekwondo student training under Baekdu-san. He retains some of his moves from the previous games, but for the most part he is his own unique character in the game. Eddie Gordo, a capoeira fighter from Brazil, Brian Fury, a cyborg kickboxing former cop, Ling Xiaoyu, a young Chinese girl who's fighting to win the prize money and open up an amusement park with it, and more. Such as Dr. Baskonovich, of course as we mentioned, Gon, and a literal plank of wood that can somehow mimic the entire roster and fighting styles, Mokujin. And of course the final two bosses, which I won't reveal just yet and let you find out throughout the story. Meanwhile, Byron Furry was once a police officer killed in a shootout. His corpse was sent to the mad 88-year-old scientist by the name of Dr. Abel, who wants to get revenge on Dr. Baskonovich because... But in any case, in order to do this, he creates a cyborg army with Brian Fury at the helm. Dr. Abel recreated the dead cop into a maniacal cyborg. The officer Lei Wulong, who is of course returned, looks into Brian and his discoveries, and it leads him to believe that Brian was more sinister than meets the eye when he was still alive, as he had ties to many drug organizations. Brian Fury... Apologies. Byron Furry, after being revived into a cyborg, targeted Yoshimitsu, and entered the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 after him, as he had strong ties to Dr. B, Dr. Abel's nemesis, thus leading Lei Wulong also entering in a chase after him. Next up, we have the Brazilian capoeira fighter Eddie Gordo. This guy's an iconic character who many still play today in Tekken 8.
Over at him. Want some of his water? To get your own, bro.
He's like, get your own, bro.
Give me some water. He slapped him like he was his kid.
And, you know, he has a really surprising and well-written story that you can sympathize with, before they kinda completely abandoned it and turned it into a joke. Eddie Gordo is a man from Brazil born in a really rich family. He was well liked in his town growing up and was a hard worker, knowing one day he'd take over the family business owned by his dad after he would pass on. However, one day when he returned home, he found his father shot up, and in his dying breath, he revealed that he'd been working to take down a cartel or organization in the town, and just when he'd gathered enough evidence against them, they arranged a hit on him. And the only way for Eddie to be safe from their hands was if he took the blame for the murder and went to prison. In prison, Eddie did not have an easy life. He thought about getting even with his father's killers every single day, and years into his sentence, one day during a prison riot, he saw an older man fighting using the martial art of capoeira. He began to practice the martial art with this man who would now be his master, until he completely and utterly mastered it himself 8 years later. When he was released from jail, he had one goal in mind, Enter the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 to get close to the Mishima financial empire, to help him exact his revenge against the kingpins who killed his father, who are implied to have been working for Kazuya. Then we had Hwoarang and Ling Xiaoyu. Hwoarang is a Korean taekwondo fighter who practiced under the taekwondo master we know from Tekken 2, Baek Do-san. Hwoarang is a street gambler who makes money through dishonest gambling wagers. Basically, he'd conceal his real strength, then come out after the wager and beat the shit out of his opponent. One day, he met Jin Kazama, and after the fight between the two of them ended in a draw, he was embarrassed that in his long career of not losing once, this match ended in a draw. He became a rival and even somewhat of a friend to Jin Kazama. They met and fought each other and also fought together many times, and alongside them was their Chinese friend, the small yet badass girl boss, Ling Xiaoyu. She was a skilled martial artist who met Jin Kazama in high school, and in her time with him she had also met Hwoarang. The three of them became somewhat of a trio. She also had a great passion for theme parks and wants to build one, so she wants to enter the tournament to win the prize money and do just that. Now, I should mention that a tiny part of what I just explained and a large part of what I will explain will be the stories of Tekken 3 and Tekken Bloodline interconnected. Tekken Bloodline is the short 6-episode anime made by Netflix. It's an adaptation of the story of Tekken 3, and although not everything in it is accurate to the games, I think it's a great adaptation that characterizes our roster pretty well. So I'll connect most of the dots that work with the games, and for what is different between the anime and the game, I'll make sure to explain myself. 15 years have passed since the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2 and Kazuya's death. Since then, Heihachi took control back over the Mishima Zaibatsu and established the Tekken Force, a private army tasked by Heihachi in carrying out special operations all over the world. However, one day, he learns that a good portion of his Tekken Force was wiped out and killed in an excavation in Central America by a mysterious force. He suspects that the being responsible for the death of his Tekken Force is the so-called Ogre, a legendary Aztec fighting god that has existed, though in deep slumber, for centuries if not millennia. Following Ogre's awakening, many martial arts masters throughout the world began being killed. He targeted only the strongest fighters in the world. Sadly, many characters such as the first king were killed by his hand. After the death of King, a young man from the late King's orphanage stepped up and donned the Jaguar mask. He'd be known as King II. Another one of Ogre's victims, much to the young Hwoarang's sadness, was the Taekwondo master Baek Do-san, who was targeted by the fighting god and was killed. Sadly, however, he would not be the last victim that Ogre would claim. During those 15 years after the death of Kazuya Mishima, Jun Kazama gave birth to a healthy boy and named him Jin. Out of fear that he would be targeted, she gave him the surname of Kazama instead of Mishima. Jin Kazama grew up with his mother alone in the mountains and forests of Yakushima. After a long and peaceful 15 years of learning the traditional Kazama Ryu fighting style from his mother, Jin Kazama grew up to be a kind and gentle boy. However, that sadly would change in the blink of an eye soon. One night, Ogre's next target would be Jin's mother, June, as he attacked her. She tried her best to hold him off, and she told Jin to run and to meet with his grandfather, Heihachi Mishima. Jin's memories of that day would be hazy as he would be knocked unconscious while trying to help his mother. When he came to, their house was burned to the ground. Ogre was gone, but so was his mother, nowhere to be seen. Now, this has led to the biggest load of theories ever in Tekken history. Is Jun Kazama dead? Is she just missing? Harada never confirmed her death, that was one side of the community. The other side was like, yeah, but we did see her die. You wanna know what their proof is? In the intro cutscene for Tekken 3, we see Jin's face panning out as we see Jun Kazama and his father Kazuya, which is the only time we get to see him in Tekken 3, by the way. As Jin readies himself, we see Ogre holding something in the darkness. Wanna know what people speculated that was for the longest time? That Ogre was holding Jun's severed head. Listen, we all know Tekken fans are edgy, but Jesus Christ. Besides, Tekken 8 is a thing now. Jin Kazama awakens heartbroken over the loss of his mother, with a noticeable strange mark on his left upper arm. Heeding her words, he goes to meet his grandfather, Heihachi Mishima, in the Mishima Zaibatsu headquarters. Heihachi accepts Jin and begins intensive training with him, where he would force him into unlearning the Kazama Ryu fighting style that he had spent his entire life learning with his mother, and pick up the Mishima Ryu style. In this 4-year period, Jin had become more hardened, although there was still a shine in his eyes and he retained his kind and joyful demeanor when he saw his friends Hwoarang and Xiaoyu. For the most part, he was gloomy and filled with thoughts of revenge. Heihachi had promised him that he'd get his revenge over Ogre after his training was complete. Heihachi believed that through attaining Ogre's power and blood, he'd gain immortality and be able to rule the world. Although he genuinely liked Jin and sensed none of Kazuya's devil-infested blood in him, he still hated his grandson's kind and merciful attitude towards opponents. And despite doing his best to get Jin on the path to ruthlessness and being unforgiving, Jin remained the way he is, never letting go of his mother's lessons. Finally, as Jin turned 19, Heihachi believed it was now the right time to start his plan. After announcing the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3, he believed by getting the strongest fighters in the world into one place, he would lure Ogre and be able to capture him for his own means. And thus the stage was set. After 19 years, the King of Iron Fist Tournament had returned. Throughout the intensive training he had given his grandson, Heihachi saw glimpses of explosive and dangerous power, and he began to worry. What if the devil had indeed possessed him as well, just as he did Kazuya all those years ago? He continued the plan as normal and planned to use Jin as a decoy, now curious about whether he did indeed have devil's blood or not. This would be a perfect opportunity, as a direct fight with Ogre would certainly awaken the devil gene within Jin. Jin, of course, knew this, but bore no complaints whatsoever as he entered the tournament with the sole purpose of drawing out Ogre in order to kill him. Throughout the tournament, he battles many different fighters. Different players from different places had entered this time around. The likes of Brian Fury, Yoshimitsu, Lei Wulong, Nina Williams, King II, Paul Phoenix, Jin's friends Hwoarang and Xiaoyu, and more had joined the fray. It is unknown how, canonically, the tug-of-war between Brian, Yoshimitsu, and Lei went exactly. However, in the showdown between Jin and Hwoarang, Jin ended up the victor. The matches went on, and finally, Ogre was drawn out, and the man to fight him was the man who had progressed through the tournament in dominating fashion, Paul Phoenix. In an intense battle, Paul successfully managed to defeat Ogre, having no idea that Ogre's true form was yet to emerge. He thought he had won the tournament and took his ball home.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell.
True Ogre revealed himself. Despite Heihachi being worried as the tournament went on that Ogre wasn't going to emerge, he finally did, and now his true form was unveiled, as Jin Kazama began to fight him. This, however, was not how it went in the anime, which I find to be the better version, so let me explain in Tekken Bloodline terms. In the showdown between Jin and Hwoarang, Jin had emerged victorious. Xiaoyu then went on to defeat Nina Williams. However, she was quickly dominated and defeated by King II, who would then go on to battle Paul Phoenix, and in a major surprise, the tournament veteran Paul was defeated, setting the stage for the final match, Jin vs King. During the tournament in between the matches, Jin desperately sought answers from the fighters as to who his father really was. Nina Williams did not budge and refused to talk about Kazuya. However, Paul was the one who opened up to Jin, and revealed Kazuya's heinous crimes in the past before his death. Jin was unsure as to what his mother saw in him. However, he had no time to reflect as the final round approached. Finally, in a huge battle that took Jin to his limits and left his friends in Hwoarang, Xiao, and Paul in worry for him, Jin finally arose as the victor and defeated King. And finally, only then, as Heihachi was coping and seething with rage over Ogre not appearing, he did. Ogre attacked the tournament fighters and targeted Jin. Paul, Hwoarang, and Xiao joined the fight in order to protect him as Heihachi grinned and watched safely from a distance. Jin was thrown away, and as Ogre transformed into his true form and knocked Hwoarang and Paul away, he was about to kill Xiaoyu. As the image of his mother's passing played in Jin's head, he was filled with rage and hatred, not wanting to lose yet another loved one. Jin rose and attacked Ogre once more, as he screamed with an almost devilish power. He finally vanquished Ogre and killed him once and for all. Of course, Heihachi's grin turned into a frown as he descended upon the tournament stage. Jin looked onto his grandfather with disdain. He knew the truth. He was the son of Kazuya Mishima, the man who had almost brought the world to heel with his devil powers 2 decades ago, and Heihachi only wanted to use Jin to get to Ogre for his own selfish means. Heihachi expressed pity, showing that he loved Jin as his grandson, though it was tough love for the most part. But after his display of power, he couldn't allow Jin to live any longer. Heihachi pulls out a gun and shoots Jin. As Jin falls to the ground in a pool of blood, Hwoarang, Xiao, and Paul begin to mourn for him as they call Heihachi a heartless monster. Heihachi, standing tall, states that he did the world a favor, ridding them of yet another devil. Jin hears and sees his mother for one last time and apologizes to her. He lets go of her influence and gives in to the devil. Jin emerges with horns and black feathery wings as he takes out Heihachi and begins absolutely pummeling him. Another pool of blood engulfs the two of them as Jin beats Heihachi nearly to death, while his friends watch on in horror, asking him to stop. Jin spares Heihachi and looks on to Xiao for one more second, with a look of disdain as Xiao looks terrified of what her friend had become, a man possessed. He turns away and flies off into the night sky, hateful of everything in his life. Time to piss on every single one of the game's endings, cause no matter how good and serious of a story a Tekken game might have, they'll never fail to make the endings absolutely hysterical. Jin's ending in the original Tekken 3 version of the story has him defeating Ogre, upon which he's just staring into nothing as he's like, huh? He then gets shot down by the Tekken Force as Heihachi deals the final shot. He then gets up, awakening the devil, and literally just throws Heihachi through a brick wall. Julia's ending, correct me if I'm wrong, is the first one in Tekken history to have proper voice acting, and it might be the most uninteresting sounding and mild voice acting I've ever heard.
Michelle? Mother!
Meanwhile, Xiao Yu's ending for some reason is... anime. Tekken 3 also featured some brand new modes for us to dabble in, giving us at the time the most unique side content we'd probably ever seen in a fighting game. While Tekken 2 added a fun bit of stuff a few years back, such as team battle, time attack, and survival, there was nothing that was quite out of the box yet. Nothing that deviated from the core gameplay of Tekken, and this is where Tekken 3 changed the landscape. The first of the two unique modes it added was Tekken Force, a side-scrolling beat-em-up minigame where you fight through hordes and hordes of Tekken Force fighters in 4 different stages, ending each stage in a boss fight where you fight a character from the game. This was probably the weakest iteration of this mode, which does return in some of the future games. It does not hold up well and features some of the jankiest movement I've ever had the misfortune to play, but it's still something to appreciate for how unique it was, I suppose. The different boss fights for each stage differ on each go and each character you choose to play, but the final boss is always Heihachi even if you are playing Heihachi yourself. The first stage is the Backstreets, the second stage and the longest one is the Badlands, then it's the Darkness, and finally the Mishima Fortress, where Heihachi is the final boss. For some reason, each and every non-boss Tekken Force enemy is named after a bird, assuming each type of soldier belongs to a unit named after that bird. We have the Crow, the Hawk, the Falcon, and the strongest one being the Owl, which is very accurate because owls are the best birds. Each time you beat the mode, you unlock a key, the first time being bronze, then silver, then gold, and on the 4th run you unlock a secret 5th stage, the Underground, where it's just a boss fight against Dr. B, and upon beating him you unlock him as a playable character. And this results in the most chaotic Tekken gameplay you'll ever see in your life. Then you have Tekken Ball, which would be the only iteration of the mode where the gameplay consisted of hitting a beach ball and knocking it into your opponent until they f***ing die for the foreseeable future, until Tekken 8 in 2024. While it is quite fun and good over there, it is absolutely broken, as is the case with its first Tekken 3 iteration. Tekken 3 was truly a record-shattering game that broke the limit of what a fighting game could do. While there was still no huge competitive scene when it came to Tekken, not in the way that Street Fighter had, it was slowly getting there, and this was a huge leap to get us there. It's the next game in the series, Tekken Tag Tournament, where Tekken 3 was kinda fully fleshed out, and the series saw its true competitive potential for years to come, but that's a topic for the next video in this series. So thank you so much for watching. I'm happy to also welcome NekoArk back after she was blacklisted in the last video. We made up and everything is good now. So thank you so much for watching. Ow! If you enjoyed, please remember to leave a like and subscribe as always. The Tekken Tag Tournament and Tekken 4 videos are currently finished and will be out very soon while I'm working on Tekken 5. And after that, I can finally bring you guys some new stuff to enjoy. Till then, thanks for watching once more and I'll see you next time. Bye now!